Silence didn't just fall, it was shattered by the crisp, high-pitched rip of vintage fabric. The sound cut through the Metropolitan Grand Ballroom like a gunshot in a library. 300 pairs of eyes, accustomed to seeing everything but revealing nothing, snapped toward the center of the confrontation. Millionaire's wife, Sabrina Caldwell, stood bathed in the crystal chandelier light. Her red sequined gown caught the illumination, making her look like liquid fire, and her face was flushed, not with alcohol, but with a predatory, self-righteous victory. She held a piece of torn white cloth aloft, a trophy of public humiliation. She had just taught a lesson. She had just shown a black waitress her place. But the woman who stood before her, Aaliyah Monroe, was not moving. She was not shouting. She did not raise a hand to cover the delicate slip exposed by the tear, which ran from her shoulder down to her waist. There were no tears in her eyes. There was only a terrifying, unsettling calm. It wasn't the composure of someone resigned to defeat. It was the stillness of a deep ocean predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The entire crowd, sensing that the theater of the evening had become dangerously real, held its collective breath. Aaliyah simply bent down, slowly and deliberately, her gaze fixed on the marble floor. A tiny gleaming object, a small metal card, had slipped from the torn pocket and clattered softly against the stone. She picked it up quietly. That card, bearing elegant, distinctive script, was about to be the fuse. It was about to detonate the entire evening and rewrite everything the millionaire's husband, Nathan Caldwell, thought he knew about his wife, his charity, and his perfect, insulated life. He stood 3 steps away, and for the first time in years, he truly saw the woman his wife had just humiliated. Aaliyah Monroe had navigated dozens of these events over the years. The annual Caldwell Foundation Charity Gala drew Manhattan's true elite: hedge fund managers, art collectors, and the social climbers who measured their worth in 7 figures. Tonight, she wore a simple server's apron over her white dress. It was a modest garment, but its simple lines belied the exquisite craftsmanship. It was a vintage designer piece, a gift from her grandmother, saved for special occasions that rarely came. She moved through the clusters of wealth and power, invisible among the silk and the whispers, carrying champagne flutes that cost more than her monthly rent. But tonight felt different. As she passed by, conversations paused. The usual dismissal she expected was replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Her reflection, briefly caught in a mirrored wall, showed a woman who commanded attention even in a servant's uniform. The fabric of her white dress moved with understated elegance, possessing a quality that spoke of legacy and defiance. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was sharp, cutting. It stopped Aaliyah mid-step. Sabrina Caldwell approached with a palpable, predatory grace. Her red gown flowed like liquid fire as her calculatedly precise jewelry caught the light. "I couldn't help but notice your dress," she said. The implication hung heavy in the air. How dare a waitress wear something that beautiful? Aaliyah turned slowly, maintaining the professional composure that was her shield. "Mrs. Caldwell, how may I help you this evening?" Her voice held no subservience, only polite acknowledgement. She had learned long ago that dignity was the only currency that mattered in a room like this. Sabrina's eyes narrowed, scanning the white fabric with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "Very ambitious for someone in your position," she sneered. "Where exactly did you acquire such expensive taste?" The accusation was clear, though unspoken: theft. The presumption was that a woman who looked like Aaliyah, working in service, couldn't possibly afford quality clothing through legitimate means. It was a microaggression delivered with surgical precision, designed to wound while maintaining plausible deniability. "It was my grandmother's," Aaliyah replied simply, her tone revealing nothing of the storm she carried. The dress was more than fabric. It was history. Her grandmother had worn it to gallery openings in Harlem during the Renaissance, a time when simply being seen in certain spaces required courage and conviction. Sabrina's laugh was sharp enough to cut crystal. "Your grandmother. How wonderfully convenient." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a theatrical whisper that ensured the growing audience could hear perfectly. "I happen to know this particular design. It's from Valentina's 1968 collection. Quite rare." Quite valuable. Strange how it ended up in your family. Nathan Caldwell watched from across the room, his conversation with potential investors forgotten. Something in his wife's posture triggered a primal instinct, the recognition that Sabrina was about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. A loose circle of guests formed, their collective attention focused on the confrontation, hungry for the scandal that would fuel their gossip for months. The only misunderstanding, Sabrina declared, her voice rising to performance level, is thinking you could parade around here in stolen goods without consequence. The lie hung in the air, a social execution. Without warning, she grabbed the fabric at Aaliyah's shoulder with manicured fingers that had never known real work. The sharp rip was devastating, followed by a collective gasp from the assembled elite. The dress split from shoulder to waist. Aaliyah stood utterly motionless, her composure unflinching, a violation of dignity, not just clothing. Her stillness was more unsettling than any scream. Now everyone can see exactly what kind of person you really are, Sabrina announced to her captive audience, her voice carrying the unquestioned authority of someone accustomed to being believed. Aaliyah bent down slowly, gathering the torn fabric with careful precision. As she did, the small metal card slipped from her pocket and clattered against the marble floor. The metallic chime pierced the stunned silence, drawing every eye to the gleaming object. She picked it up without haste. The card bore an elegant engraving. Nathan Caldwell, now close enough to see clearly, felt something cold settle in his chest. The International Association of Art Consultants. Level 5 certification. The implications hit him like a physical blow, rewriting everything he thought he understood. The card belonged to fewer than 200 professionals worldwide. The server was an elite art expert. Before Nathan could speak, the attention shifted again. Elderly philanthropist Charles Morrison began choking violently on a piece of salmon. Chaos erupted. But Aaliyah appeared instantly. Her hands moved with the medical precision of a trauma surgeon, applying the Heimlich maneuver with competence that spoke of training far beyond food service protocols. "Thank you, my dear," Morrison gasped, his color returning. "Are you studying medicine?" Aaliyah simply adjusted her torn dress and moved on. Nathan, utterly transfixed, began tracking her every move. She spoke fluent Italian with the consul general's wife. She discussed Renaissance techniques that made the diplomat lean forward with genuine engagement. She casually corrected an art collector, Elena Vasquez, on the 1947 provenance documentation required for a disputed Rothko, citing specific gallery stamps. The Waitress possessed expertise that required years of specialized world-class study. His phone buzzed. A text from his business partner. "Your wife just made headlines. Check the society pages." He ignored it, focusing instead on the woman who was clearly running a much deeper, more consequential operation than serving drinks. Then, disaster truly struck. A renowned collector stumbled backward from an animated conversation. His wine glass arced through the air in slow motion. The deep burgundy liquid splashed directly across the surface of Nathan's Monet water. Lily painting a $28 million centerpiece. Panic was immediate, a chaotic chorus of ill-informed suggestions. "Nobody touch anything," Aaliyah's voice cut through the commotion with quiet, undeniable authority. Her torn dress was forgotten in the face of genuine emergency. "Wine contains tannins and sulfites. We have maybe 10 minutes before it bonds with the canvas." She knelt beside the painting, her movements deliberate. "I need distilled water, cotton swabs, and a soft natural bristle brush, not tap water." The specificity silenced the crowd's amateur suggestions. She began the delicate process of removing the wine, working from the outside of the spill inward. Her hands moved with surgical precision, each touch calculated to remove liquid without disturbing the paint beneath. "Where on earth did you learn to do this?" the shaken collector asked. "I mean, you work in service, don't you?" "Museums teach you to respect what can't be replaced," Aaliyah replied without pausing. "I've spent time in conservation labs in Paris, London, and New York. Cross-training helps when you encounter unusual damage." The casual recitation of prestigious, world-class institutions left the elite crowd speechless. What Nathan was witnessing wasn't luck. It was the application of world-class expertise to save his most valuable possession. The painting looked pristine. The surface was stable. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, accomplished by someone who had been dismissed as mere help only an hour earlier. Sabrina appeared at Nathan's elbow, her earlier triumph now tinged with desperate, corrosive anger. This is ridiculous. She's putting on an elaborate performance to gain sympathy after being caught stealing. What I see, Nathan replied, his voice slow and heavy with new realization, is someone who just saved our most valuable painting using techniques that would challenge a museum professional. We have all made some very serious miscalculations tonight. The last guest departed by midnight. Nathan dismissed the remaining staff, but Aaliyah remained in the kitchen, methodically cleaning serving trays. He approached her, driven by hours of accumulated confusion. The other servers left an hour ago, he said quietly. You don't have to stay. Aaliyah looked up from loading the dishwasher. I always finish what I start, she replied. She closed the dishwasher and turned to face him fully, her composure unnervingly calm. Your wife wasn't threatened by me, Mr. Caldwell. She was threatened by what I represent, the possibility that her assumptions about the world might be wrong. Who are you really? He demanded, the question carrying the full weight of his collapsing world. Aaliyah reached into her pocket and retrieved the metal card. In the harsh fluorescent light, its engraving was clearly visible. International Association of Art Consultants, Level 5 certification. Below that, her name and credentials from Columbia and the Sorbonne. I'm Dr. Aaliyah Monroe, she said, watching his reaction. For the past 5 years, I've been working with international law enforcement to track stolen and forged artwork through the high-end auction circuit. Tonight was supposed to be a quiet, final evidence-gathering operation. Your wife's art purchases caught our attention 18 months ago. They show patterns consistent with a sophisticated money laundering network. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. You were investigating art fraud, he said slowly, at my charity gala, in my home. I don't think, Mr. Caldwell, Aaliyah said without hesitation. I document. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through dozens of photographs, provenance documentation, and private sale records. Tonight provided an excellent opportunity to observe how certain pieces move through your social circle and confirm some long-held suspicions about their origins. She paused, her professional mask slipping slightly to reveal cold gravity. Your wife's decision to physically assault a federal investigator while 300 witnesses watched changed the timeline considerably. What was planned as a quiet operation just became a very public criminal matter. Nathan sank into one of the kitchen chairs, the full weight of the situation crushing him. Are you wearing a wire? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Everything is documented, she confirmed. Video, audio, photographic evidence of the assault, plus 18 months of financial records and transaction documentation. Your wife didn't just tear a dress tonight. She attacked a federal agent conducting an authorized investigation. What happens now? He asked, resigned. Now you have a choice, Aaliyah said gently. You can help us understand how deep this conspiracy goes and what you knew about your wife's activities. Or you can continue protecting someone who's put you both in legal jeopardy. The kitchen fell silent. Nathan stared at the woman he had dismissed as the help, recognizing that she held the power to destroy everything he had built. The video appeared on social media at 6 o'clock in the morning. Posted by a guest who had captured Sabrina's assault on her phone, the caption was damning. Manhattan socialite tears dress off black waitress at charity gala. Turns out, the waitress is actually a renowned art expert. By 8 a.m., the footage was viral, shared across platforms, positioning Sabrina as the embodiment of privileged racism and entitlement. Nathan's phone buzzed incessantly. CNN was running the story. Dr. Harrison Webb from the Metropolitan Museum appeared on 3 different networks, vouching for Dr. Aaliyah Monroe's expertise. She is one of the most respected authentication specialists in the world, he stated. To see her humiliated in this manner is beyond comprehension. The social consequences were immediate and merciless. Half their major donors called to withdraw support. 3 major business partnerships were postponed indefinitely. The country club where they had held membership for 15 years called to discuss recent developments and their impact on the club's reputation. She planned this, Sabrina screamed, frantically pacing their living room. She came to our event specifically to create this situation. Her delusion remained intact, even as the walls of her life collapsed. Our side of the story, Nathan's voice carried only bitter finality, is that you physically attacked an innocent woman because you assumed she was a criminal based on her race and occupation. What part of that story do you think will generate sympathy? That afternoon, Nathan's lawyer called with the news. The district attorney's office had opened a criminal investigation. They were looking into the assault and into the financial irregularities surrounding the art purchases. The legal implications were expanding beyond simple assault into territory that could destroy them both. The arrest came 3 days later at dawn. Federal agents arrived with warrants. Sabrina Caldwell was led away in handcuffs, every humiliating second captured by news cameras hungry for content. The charges were extensive and methodically documented. Money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, and assault on a federal officer. Aaliyah's 18 months of evidence made conviction virtually certain. Nathan's cooperation proved extensive and valuable. He turned over financial records and communication logs, testifying against other network participants. His plea agreement spared him prison time, but he lost most of his fortune through asset forfeiture and civil penalties. The Caldwell Foundation was restructured under federal oversight. The art collection that had been Sabrina's pride was dismantled piece by piece. 17 pieces were seized as purchased with laundered money. The network Sabrina had participated in involved galleries across 3 countries and resulted in indictments across the international art world. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe testified before Congress, leading to the Art Market Transparency Act bipartisan legislation that required detailed provenance documentation for high-value art sales. She consulted with governments and trained investigators in specialized techniques for detecting sophisticated fraud schemes. Nathan, the former billionaire, became an advocate for transparency. He established the Monroe Fellowship, a scholarship fund for students from underrepresented communities pursuing careers in art history and museum studies. The man who once dismissed service staff now championed dignity and accountability. 6 months after Sabrina's sentencing, the same Metropolitan Grand Ballroom where everything began hosted the first Art Crime Prevention Conference. Dr. Aaliyah Monroe stood at the podium wearing an elegant white dress, immaculate this time, addressing an audience of investigators, prosecutors, and museum professionals committed to protecting cultural heritage. "The true measure of a person lies not in the garments they wear," she said, her voice carrying quiet strength, "but in the dignity they maintain and the integrity they demonstrate when confronting injustice." The sustained standing ovation reflected a recognition that extended far beyond professional respect. People who had once dismissed her as invisible help now understood she had always possessed exactly the qualifications her work required. The only change was their willingness to see what had always been there. The white dress remained pristine as she gathered her materials. Its significance evolved beyond repair or redemption. It represented truth's enduring power, strength from maintaining dignity under pressure, and the reality that a person's true worth could never be diminished by another's prejudice. This story proves that true worth is never diminished by another's prejudice.